Welcome back, everybody, to this week's episode of Heavy Branches. We are another week without Jacob Simpson. This week it's just me and Cabe. This is a first for us. Me and Cabe. One of these days, I'm telling you, I'm gonna have to not be on an episode just to see how it goes with just Jacob and Jacob. I have a feeling Cabe will do most of the talking.
No.
But we're excited to be back on this week. Was very thankful that Derek could hop on with us last week.
Awesome.
But this week we're going to kind of do our normal thing. We're going to hop into John 15. But before we do that, I guess, Jacob, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Life is good on the mountain. No more snow. It's sunny. It was like 65. I'm wearing shorts today, so I'm real happy about that. Yeah, everything's going well. I'm preaching through the second half of the book of Matthew. I'm doing a series called Following Jesus, so looking at the idea of like what it takes to be a Christ follower, or what that looks like. So that's been a lot of fun. Got to be a lot of fun with the different parables and stuff like that. So yeah, how about you, Tanner? How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I've got about 6 weeks here where I only have to preach one sermon, so that gives me some extra time to work on some of the other events and things we've got going on. The main reason that's happening is because of our mission month.
Yeah.
So we have 4 guest speakers coming in. Dylan Borkland, who is, or Bjorklund, or I'm
Bjorklund.
Yeah, I'm bad about saying his name wrong.
Yeah, I've never done that.
But he's preaching the first week. He's planting a church in Moorhead, Kentucky, called Foothills, and so that's exciting. And then we have Jim Newman, who is a missionary in Australia, and then Scott Sheridan with Acre, and then Kerry was supposed to come, but he's still working on through his recovery from his surgery. So a guy named Terry Peer is going to be preaching for us.
No name guy. You don't know him at all, yeah?
Yeah, no, it's going to be cool to have my grandpa for a week. It'll feel a little bit like the normal, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, it's only been since last May. We're getting close to a year, but still got some time left.
Sit in the pews and listen to your grandpa preach.
Yeah.
Well,
that'll be cool. But yeah, pretty good here. Finally, me, Kinsey, and Willow seem to be past all the sickness, so we've been healthy for a couple weeks, which is nice, for sure. But yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, so today we want to do something fun. Jacob is not here with us, so he gets no vote or no say in what we do. So we decided for our icebreaker today, we're going to give our favorite memory of Jacob. And Tanner's known him since childhood, so I'm sure he has a lot of fun stuff to talk about. I've known him since my first day at Louisville, so it's been a while. So a favorite memory, and then worst memory. You know, what the one stuff that you're just not sure about Jacob. So we're going to give our favorite memory, worst memory. He's not here, so he can't reject what we're doing. So
let's start with worst memory, and both of us, and then we'll do best memory.
Okay, you start with worst. You want to give a shot?
Okay, so there's options here. Okay,
a lot of them.
You know, just his general nonchalant attitude over the years has caused some frustration, but probably the top of the list. He's not a bad guy. I love him to death. But there was this time, you know. Well, let me preface with this. There was this. Jacob has this thing where he can like click his big toe, and he'll put it on your thigh or your shin, and he'll like click his big toe, and it's extremely annoying. And he knows that, and he will do it just to bug you. If you're like sitting next to him watching a football game or something, and he goes to commercial, he'll start doing that. But anyway, so one of these days he was in an exceptionally bad mood, and I don't even remember what I was doing. But give him a little taste of his own medicine, bugging him somehow, poking at him or something. He said, "If you do that one more time, I'm going to punch you." Now, he's been clicking his toe on me for years, and I've never done that. Told him to stop, yeah, but never just punched him. Well, I did it, honestly testing him, and he got up and punched me in the shoulder, and it didn't really hurt that bad, but that's probably the worst memory I have of him, which isn't that crazy of a memory, but yeah, I didn't expect him to actually do it, and he did it. He kept his word.
I would say that I'm not like you, Tanner. You said there was a lot to pick from. I can't think of too many bad memories. The big one would probably be you got there in Hillsboro. Probably the first time me and Jacob and Tanner all went together. They stayed my little camper, and I was driving a really junky '97 Rav4, which if you know they're tiny, and it was just awful. Like I remember getting to the Hillsboro. It's a 5-hour drive from where I grew up. And Tanner thought my car was blowing up because of the white smoke, but it was just steam because of how hot my car got. But on the way home, or what happened is that we were going to leave in the morning, and I was driving Jacob, but he just nonchalantly forgot that he was leaving at like 8 a.m. to go on a family vacation. And so that forced us to drive at night, pulling a camper in a junky car in pouring down rain. I cannot see at night. It's not just my glasses. I just cannot see. And so I had to have Jacob drive my car with a camper while it's raining 2.5 hours in a place he's never drove before. And it was awful.
I actually had forgotten about that.
That was a terrible experience. We made it. No one died, but just, man.
That's a perfect example of his nonchalantness.
Yeah, just no planning whatsoever. Just, oh yeah, I gotta leave like this moment, and yeah.
All right. Well, let's say something positive about him.
Let's go good. Yeah, Jacob's a fantastic guy. A lot of good memories.
I've got two specific ones that have been special over the years. The first one is just growing up. His family lives on a farm with 2 ponds, and we used to. I wish we still did, but with just the busyness and ministry and stuff, we don't get the opportunity, but as often. But we used to go fishing out there at his ponds all the time, and I remember. There was one specific day, the smaller pond we call the cheater pond, and we would go out there with worms and a bobber, and some would say that's not fishing. Okay, you just don't like fun. But when the bluegill are biting, especially if you got a little rod, bluegill fight like crazy.
Yeah,
and we caught 30 bluegill or more in just a matter of a couple hours, and so that's always a memory that sticks out. And then the other one is the day he called me and asked me about going to Bible college.
Yeah.
I think I've said this before on here, but that was a big surprise. I never thought that was something he would find himself being called into, and so that day sticks out to my mind. It was a moment where I got to talk to a very close friend about choosing what I believe to be the best job in the world.
Yeah, and before that conversation, would you have ever imagined that you would be now with a friend, best friend Jacob, full-time ministry in Zimbabwe, talking about how
absolutely not. Yeah, I mean, when we were in high school, okay, we had the opportunity to go on mission trips. We went to Arizona for a year, and then Eastern Kentucky, and then I went to Haiti 3 years, and then Honduras a year, and then actually another time, but that wasn't with our church. And Jacob never went on any of those. Now, I think I don't remember the reason behind it. It might have been because his family vacations happened to the same week. I don't know. Now, I will say there were a couple like weekend trips to Eastern Kentucky that he went on. So it's not like he never did anything. But for him to tell us that he was going to Zimbabwe for a month, that was wild to me. I never expected that. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome to see what he's doing. Mine are very similar. I was thinking me and Jacob, before I got married and moved away. We spent a lot of time at the school together, and one thing we did, we went to all the events together. So like Hillsboro, Southern Indiana, we visited one summer specifically. We went to like 4 or 5 of them, and one of my favorite memories was we went to National Prayer Clinic, and there is a national or a state park called, real close, and we caught no fish, but it was one of the prettiest places that I've ever fished before. And just spending a couple hours just, right before we're hearing great preaching in God's creation by a stream. There's something about river or stream fishing that's just like, man,
Yeah.
it's just amazing. So that was probably one of them. And then the other is, I've talked about this last week, but Jacob was the one that baptized me, at LBC into Christ, and like just the conversations that led up to it. And when I said I was ready, he was like, let's do it. And so, yeah, I'll just, we both have a real good relationship with Jacob. He's one of our closest friends, and we do thank, the Lord for all the stuff that he's doing and what he means to us. We like to mess with him, and I'm really excited to tell him what we're doing for this icebreaker, because he'll be like, yeah, great guy. We're excited for him in Zimbabwe, but we're pumped for him to get back as well. So,
and just to tell a quick story, if you follow him on Facebook, you already know this, but he's been supporting a child through the Hippo Valley program for a couple years. Is it 2 years, 3 years?
Yeah.
And he actually had the opportunity to meet the young guy that he supports, which is really cool.
That's so neat.
Yeah. So if you're interested in a ministry to support, maybe check that out, because
Hippo Valley, they're great. They do amazing stuff in Africa.
Yeah. Well, back to the normal here. Yeah. Let's hop into John 15. Why don't we?
I got a verse 1 for you. Tanner, do you got one?
I do. We both have one?
No, you do.
Okay. All right. I got a verse 1 here. Last week, or not last week, but when we were in John 14, we spent a pretty significant amount of time on Jesus's exclusive statement, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me," or "but through me," depending on your translation. And this chapter immediately kicks off with another one of those statements. The statement is then drawn out a little more than maybe the last one was throughout the chapter. So we're not just going to spend all our time on this verse, but I just want to read it. It says, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the vine dresser." So there, it's kind of like, the way I think about it in a analogy sense is, you're walking through the woods and you run up on like this mess of twigs and vines and stuff, and there's a lot of dead ones, and then there's one green one. And if you were to pull on the dead ones, they would pull right up. They have no value. But then there is the true vine there, the green one that's rooted in the ground. It's strong, and coming off of that vine, unlike the other ones, is other branches. So what are we thinking, Cabe?
No, I think that's true. I love this idea of like true vine, meaning there's fake vines you could be connected to, and you can be connected to a fake vine thinking it's the true vine, but then because of what he's about to talk about in the next few verses, you'll realize, oh, maybe that isn't the true vine. And so Christ, is the vine. He's the one that we have to be connected to. Yeah, and I think he kind of explains that a little bit more in the next couple verses.
Yeah. So I'll just say as we get into this more, this chapter for the specific point of our podcast is really hard to not just
Yeah.
break down every part of it, because this is the chapter that our I guess foundational verse comes from in verse 8. And we did an episode on this when we did our short series on obstacles to bearing fruit. And we would encourage you to listen to that one if you haven't. But we're going a little more in depth, I think, in this chapter, drawing out a little more what Jesus is talking about. But like I said, it's going to be hard for us to not just walk verse by verse. We're going to do our best to give you the idea and let you really sit down with it. But I'm just going to read probably through verse 4
Okay.
to kick us off here. It says, "Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away, and every branch that bears fruit, he prunes it, so that it may bear more fruit. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, so neither can you unless you abide in me." And what we're beginning to what Jesus is beginning to express here is the relationship that we have with Christ and he has with the Father, and how those things connect, and how we should view it.
Yeah. I want to spend a second to the thrown away branch, the branch that does not bear fruit. So I think verses 2 and 6 connect. But what you just read, every branch in me does not bear fruit, he takes away. So there is a branch, and he says that I'm the true vine, my father is a vine dresser. I think we can say we are the branches, and there are branches that do not bear fruit. And I think what happens to these branches, they're taken away in this way. Verse 6 says, "If anyone does not abide in me, who is not connected to the vine, he's thrown away as a branch, then dry up, then they are gathered and cast them into the fire, and they are burned." They're burned. Okay, so there's two distinct branches here. There's one that does not bear fruit, that is burned in a fire, that is taken away, and then a branch that does bear fruit, that is connected to the true vine. And I can't not help but think of eternity. I think of heaven connected to the vine, connected to Christ in the presence of God, and then the separated, the one that's thrown away because of the lack of abiding in the true branch. At least I think that is the imagery that we see here.
Yeah, and this relationship that's being described throughout this whole chapter, and by the end of it, we hope to kind of expand on this more, is the idea of covenant. This, which is throughout all of Scripture, but Old Testament and New Testament, that's actually kind of how those are broken up. Is there's the Old Covenant in the Old Testament, and then the New Covenant in the New Testament. Jesus, the Gospels are in the New Covenant, where the Old Covenant is still present. It still exists, but the reason the Gospels are in the New Testament is Jesus is fulfilling the Old Covenant to bring about the New Covenant. And so what Jesus begins to describe here is, what that relationship is like. How God, being the vine dresser, is the one that sets the terms for the covenant. How you get in the covenant, which what Jesus is talking about here is people that have already been cleaned, people that are already attached to the vine. Um, and as Jacob just said, there can be people or vines removed, um, but he's talking about individuals that have been cleaned, um, are in this covenant relationship already. Um, and the important, I guess, starting details about the covenant is that God sets the terms
Yeah.
for the covenant. We don't get to pick and choose the terms. God's the one that sets them, and then we choose to accept them. Um,
And I want us to notice, Tanner, and I'll let you go on in a second, is in this as we read on, I want us to really pay attention to the action words, or the words that will say if, or you need to, or things that we are commanded to do. And that's what he's talking about, is things God sets the terms for the covenant, and Jesus is describing some of those terms, and some of them are synonymous. He's saying the same things in different ways, but really pay attention to the things that we are commanded to do as being a part of this covenant, that we've already been connected to the vine, and this is what we have to do. Like verse 4, abide in me. That's an action word. Or we see in 7, if you abide in me, my words abide in you. And then verse 10, if you keep my commandments. And then it goes on and on. We can keep listening, and probably will, of these things that are asked of us.
yeah, and that word abide is the actual command, or it is to live in that covenant with
Yeah.
Jesus. It is,
Stay
uh,
connected.
and it's not just a willingness of the heart. It is actually doing it. It's actually choosing to abide in Christ, to stay connected to Him, um, to live through Him according to the Word. And we'll get into that more as we do this. But the key phrase, I guess, in this is that if we're living in covenant, we're going to bear fruit.
Yeah, going to. Yeah.
There's not a
Yeah.
there's not a world where we can remain in covenant yet not bear fruit.
And I love the language, Tanner, that's used in verse 8. I don't think we use this language enough when it comes to the church and our preaching and teaching. But just look at what Jesus says. My Father is glorified by this, that you bear much fruit, so prove to be my disciples. Of course, he's talking about the disciples, but I like this idea. There's a proving to be done. There has to be fruit that is growing, or fruit that has to be seen.
Yeah, and there's really a close connection with with James, in
Yeah.
him talking about faith without works being dead. Uh, it's not that the works save, but it's that real faith produces good works.
Mhm.
Um, and so if we are living in covenant, we're going to bear fruit.
Yeah.
And without it, we have no covenant. We have chosen to break that covenant.
Mhm.
Um, so
And like sometimes people put a negative spin on this, like you shouldn't have to prove something, like you should, and you're seeing it the wrong way, because God does love us in this way to send His Son to die. But people think this proving is bad. But I think I love that Jesus continues in verse 11 and talks about what this process of being in covenant produces, or what it looks like. And he says, these things I've spoken to you, that my joy will be made in you, and that your joy may be made full. And so, like, I love this idea that, these things are not a bad thing. We're not forced to be in covenant. We get to be in covenant. And because of that, we find a joy that is full in obedience. Do you want to speak on that for a second, Tanner, about how does joy being produced and doing these things?
yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is the most perfect definition, but the way that I would define Christian joy is is also hope. It's that assurance of the hope that we have. It is built off that. It is the reason we have joy is because of the hope that we have in Christ. And so when we're serving, when we're bearing fruit, when we're obeying the commands of God, we are living that hope out. It is experiencing the hope that we have, especially in other people when we're serving other people and they get to have experienced a measure of the hope that we have by serving them, and that produces joy in our lives. I've talked about this before, but the reason I'm in ministry is because I was asked to go on a mission trip in high school and got to really experience what it was like to serve God and experience the joy of serving Christ because of the hope that I have. And that's the reason I chose to go into ministry. There is nothing like it.
And did you use the words assurance, right? I think
Yeah.
that's so important when it comes to this because, like, without like assurance, I think it's very hard to be joyful because it's the idea. If I like, okay, I'm not sure if I'm this vine that's connected. I'm not sure if it's this vine connected that's going to be thrown in the fire. Like, oh, I'm not, this idea of being in limbo. Like, I don't know where I stand in the eyes of a righteous and holy and powerful creator. Like, I just don't know where I am. Like, there's no way to be like, okay, there's joy, because happiness, that's fleeting moment to moment. Joy is that, that thing that stays. It's connected because of the assurance, because we're connected to the vine and know that there's
Yeah, and that's why Paul says in Philippians that to rejoice always,
yeah.
because we know that our hope is solid. It's unbreakable. If there comes a moment where we lack hope, it's not it's just because of our own doubt. It's not because the hope that Jesus offered is broken. That is solid.
And
um
God doesn't say, or Paul doesn't say, be happy always, or we're happy in all things. Because no, we're not supposed to be happy in all things. Things are going to be bad. Things are going to happen. But happiness, that's that fleeting, with whatever goes. But joy is that feeling, that assurance, that that foundation of knowing, even when the things are struggling. Oh, there's something more. There's the future, there is eternal life, there is salvation, there is heaven. And because of that, oh, I can look to the future and have, like Jesus says, this full joy, or the joy that's made full. And I love that he says, may my joy be full in you, which that's really cool.
yeah. And to add to this idea of covenant, um it is a relationship that God has established.
Yeah.
um and something I heard Terry Carter preach on this a couple years ago on this chapter, and one of the things that he kept emphasizing with the fact that a covenant is a relationship is that every relationship that we have has rules.
Hmm.
So, like when it doesn't have rules, it doesn't last.
Yeah.
So your relationship with your parents, right? They set rules for the household. Um, if the rules aren't kept, then the relationship gets strained and broken. Um, when you have a relationship with like a marriage relationship, there are rules in that relationship. Primary example, one of the things we're not supposed to do is commit adultery, right? Uh, that is a
Don't even
rule
take that
in
ring off, Tanner.
do what?
Don't even take the ring off.
Yeah,
Yeah, it stays
but
on.
that is a rule in marriage, and when that's broken, though God hates divorce, a lot of times it is extremely difficult, if not near impossible, to to um, rekindle that relationship because of the trust that is broken. So this relationship that we have with God, this covenant that we have with God through Jesus, is not different from any other relationship. It has rules. And so, like in verse 10, it says, "If you keep my commandments, you will abide in my love, just as I have kept my Father's commandments and abide in his love." If we value the relationship that we have with God or anybody else, then we're going to value the rules that are that maintain that relationship.
Yeah, that's good.
So if we value the covenant with God, if we value his love, if we value the relationship that he has established for us through Christ, then we are going to bear fruit.
Yeah. And speaking of the rules of the covenant, verse 12.
Yeah.
This is my commandment, that you love one another just as I have loved you. I want to speak for a second, Tanner, if you don't mind to have a conversation about this. What is Jesus saying when we are to love others like he has loved you? You know, he's speaking to the disciples, but
Well, we could go back to John 13. You know, that's like one of my favorite chapters in all the
bread and
Bible,
butter, you know.
where Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. He's and I would just encourage you to go back to that chapter and read it. But Jesus is washing the disciples' feet. He is making a sacrifice by doing something that would have been considered something a servant did, or something. It was something dirty. And Peter even tries to stop Jesus from doing it, but Jesus says, I have to do this for you. And we talked about the humility aspect of all that. But what Jesus is getting ready to do is go to the cross here in just a couple chapters. And so I still believe the statement back in John 13 is true here, that when Jesus says to Peter, "You can't follow me, but at some point you will," it's because Jesus hasn't gone to the cross and they don't understand yet the depth of or true love that Christ has for them.
Yeah, and I
But
think
what he's talking about is sacrifice.
I think that's proven, Tanner, in verse 13. I think
Yeah.
what you just said, that they don't understand it yet. Because what does he say? He says, "This is my commandment. They love one another just as I loved you." Well, how is that love seen? Verse 13, "Greater love is none more than this, that one lays down his life for his friends." That's the definition. That's the standard that Jesus gives. I love that, Tanner. That's great.
We try to talk about context quite a lot when we're on this podcast. These chapters in John 13 through like really 17, that is a whole context that you have to take into consideration as you're reading through this. I believe, and you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong, I believe John 13 through 17 is all one night or one day.
I believe so.
So all of this is
20 days
happening.
on John.
Huh?
Most of John is done what in like 20 something days, isn't it?
From 13 to the end is pretty short. Yeah.
Yeah, it's right there. If it's not the same
From 13, I'm pretty sure from 13 to his death is like 12 hours.
Yeah. So like this is back to back to back, and so and also it's this idea of what's about to happen. Like, why is Jesus saying this? Well, he's saying this because he's about to go to the cross. That's why he's telling him this. And so, like, when they think back of Jesus telling him to love other people, they're going to think, well, he said to love,
like him.
Yeah, like him. What did he do? He died.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
And I say this tentatively. Us loving like Jesus does not mean that every single person that loves like Jesus is going to be murdered.
Yeah.
Okay, John, who's wrote this gospel, is an example of that. He was exiled to the islands of Patmos, um, you know, but we don't, from history, we believe he was. Uh, I mean, this is one of those things we don't know for certain, but it seems like John was possibly the only apostle that wasn't martyred.
Yeah.
He died of old age. That doesn't mean that John didn't love like the other apostles did, though. But I will say, like Peter and Paul and many of the other apostles are recorded as being martyred, at least in history, if not in the Bible.
And we don't talk about this enough, I don't think. But they laid down their life out of love. That's what it
Yeah,
was.
yeah,
Love for God, love for Christ, and love for the lost souls they were preaching to. It
yeah.
wasn't for any other reason, but they were completely convinced of the truth of Jesus' resurrection, truth of what Jesus taught, and out of the love for those that were perishing.
And we were talking about joy when Paul, is it Paul and Barnabas or Paul and Silas that are in jail and singing?
Silas.
Silas. Okay, when Paul and Silas are put in jail for preaching the gospel, they still have joy, even though they're in that situation, because their hope is in Christ. And so, though bad circumstances are happening, they still have that joy.
Yeah. And like, when Paul talks about rejoicing over and over again in Philippians, what is happening in his life?
Yeah, yeah,
Severe persecution. He has almost nothing, and he says, "I'm content in all circumstances." He's talking about loss, talks about hunger, talks about imprisonment, all things. He's content. Why? Well, because it's connected to the vine.
yeah,
He's
yeah,
content. And I love. Okay, so you said, Tanner, that they don't all have to die. All those that you don't have to lay your life down because of persecution. But I will say that to be a follower, uh, there is a good chance you're going to be hated, and I think that's what we see in verses 18 through 19. I just want
yeah,
to. It says, "If the world hates you, if the world hates you, you know that it has hated me before it hated you." Okay, so the world hated Christ enough to kill him. We got that. 19. If you were of the world would love its own. But because you are not of this world, but I choose you out of the world, because of this, the world hates you. So I would say that if you are a follower, that you're going to face hatred. You're going to face some issues. You're going to face people being against you. And I would even say that if you are a Christian and you're professing Christ and that you've obeyed the gospel, that you're connected to the vine, and you're not hated in some way, there might be a problem.
yeah. If you're keeping this covenant, uh, Jesus is saying, don't be surprised. Like, this is going to happen. It's not a maybe. It's the world, and that's a very broad term, and I understand that. That doesn't mean that everybody you share the gospel with is gonna smack you. But if you're sharing the gospel, there are going to be people. If you're sharing the gospel, if you're making sacrifices for people, if you're trying to do what's right, um, then the world, broad term, is going to hate us. Um, and so he's saying, don't be surprised by that. Uh, and I agree with Jacob. Um, and you know, I have expressed this with the the congregation at Glen Estee, um, that I get I sometimes it frustrates me a little bit. The In youth group, we would always get asked, like, are you willing? Are you willing to? And they would come up with like scenarios. So like a scenario like, if you and your family got captured and there was a person holding a weapon to your family,
Wait a minute.
and
A
they
youth minister told that to children?
yeah.
Oh my,
Not children. I mean, I was in high school.
teenagers. That's wild though.
But like, would you deny Jesus, or would you say I'm not going to deny Jesus?
Oh man.
I understood what they were doing, um, and everybody, all of us would always say, we're willing. But here's the thing: if we're truly willing, then we're actually going to do something to put ourselves in situations to be hated. If we're actually willing, if we're actually seeking to keep the covenant because we love God, um, if we're seeking to abide in Christ, it's not just I say that I'm willing, it's actually going and doing. And if we're doing things, then we're putting ourselves in situations to be persecuted. If we're not doing anything, and you're like, and people are talking about persecution, and you think, well, I'm not ever really persecuted. Well,
And we're
there's a
not
reality.
Yeah, we're not talking about people like threaten your life. We're talking about things being difficult or maybe losing friendships or relationships or because of the stance you take. Maybe Thanksgiving dinner is a little awkward because
Yeah.
well maybe someone's not doing what's right and you stood for the truth and now they're upset at you. It's this idea that life as a Christian is uncomfortable at times because the world is pushing against the truth of Christ. And so we're not talking about someone slitting your throat because of you preaching the gospel, but we're saying like because you're standing for truth in a world that is pushing against truth, that there's a tension that lies there, that things become difficult.
And what makes it even more difficult is, even though the world will hate us, we're still to love them.
Mm. Because why are you pushing against lies? Because we want them to know the truth.
We want the lost soul to be found. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're not trying to preach the gospel or call someone out on sin. We're not trying to do that because we're trying to beat someone on the head with a Bible. But we're doing it because they're a precious soul in the eyes of God that is separated from the eternal God that loves them so much. And the only way for that to be reconciled is through Christ, that we want them to accept. Yeah, it's all out of love. It's all out of love.
So Jesus says, Jesus is explaining not to be surprised by that, but instead keep the covenant, still bear fruit. Because if we are surprised by that, or in any way it takes us off guard, then maybe it's that hatred that pushes us off balance, that makes us question the relationship that we have with God through Christ, or that makes us question the hope that we have. So Jesus is warning them, because of the hope you have, this is going to happen. Don't let that push you off course.
And I love that, he goes on to the next couple verses to explain that more about persecution, about the problems they're going to face, about, if they hate me, they also hate the Father. He says all those things. But then, I'm just imagining in my head, Jesus knows what the disciples are thinking because they hear all that and they go, the world's going to hate me. I'm going to be persecuted. All these I could just imagine your eyes are this big. So this is a lot. And then we see verse 26. He says, when the helper comes, whom I will send you from the Father, that is the Spirit of truth who proceeds from the Father, he will testify about me, and you will testify also, because you have been with me from the beginning. What is he called? The Holy Spirit? The helper. So this is not something they have to do alone. And a lot of this is speaking of what they are going to do after the resurrection, which is going to go preach the gospel, plant churches, face persecution because of the message of Christ. But they have a helper in the Spirit. And man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Man. And he's still the helper. We mentioned this a couple of weeks ago in different ways, because we know the apostles had this special Indwelling. We said indwelling, right? It's the language we use.
The apostles had it on them. Every Christian has it in them.
In them,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I was making sure I said that right. And we have the Spirit in us, but He's still the helper, and He still helps us in ways that we covered a few weeks ago. But man, that's just amazing. That even though we're going to face these issues, and maybe not, intense persecution this way, but life becomes difficult. We still have the Holy Spirit that's living within us.
Yeah. And it does help us. Maybe not in the exact same way as the apostles, but
You can't take my garment and be healed, Tanner. I'm sorry, buddy.
yeah. But he does help us, and we talked in a couple episodes ago about the manners in which he helps us. So I'd encourage you to go back and check that out. I think that's all I got.
Yeah, man. We could have spent a lot more time on that, guys. But I appreciate you being with us. I love this chapter. It's just, man, there's just a lot there.
And just as a quick run through, I just want to share what these 11 things that Terry Carter has talked about
On this
that
chapter.
on this chapter that are about being in covenant, keeping this covenant. And you can write them down, or I guess mark this and come back to them as often as you want. But just these quick 11 things. 1, to keep covenant, be in His Word. 2, be in His love. You can look at 1 Corinthians 13 for add to it. 3, keep His commandments. 4, being fed. 5, walk like Jesus. Check out 1 John 2 verse 6. Number 6, must love our brother. 1 John 2:18. 7, do the will of God. 1 John 2:17. 8, must be in the gospel. 1 John 2:24. 9, does not sin continually or make a practice of sin. 1 John 3:6. And I just want to pause on that one for a second. Being in covenant with God, one sin doesn't make us one of those branches that gets pulled off the true vine and thrown into the fire. But it's this mindset where we think we can continually sin or make a practice of sin and disregard what God has called us to be in this covenant. Then 10, continual practice of confessing Jesus. 1 John chapter 4 verse 2. And then 11, care about doctrine. 2 John verse 9. And I just wanted to run through that because I think it's been helpful for me to consider those things.
Yeah, that's a good concise list on the idea. I love that.
All right, we missed Song of the Week last week, but I've got one.
Oh, good. I don't.
The song is called Let My Words Be Few. The one that I'm going to add is the Shane and Shane one. There's probably a lot of versions, but that's just the one I'm going to add to our Heavy Branches playlist. But I love the way that this starts. It is a message of pure humility. One of the things that I've heard my grandpa say over the years is in prayers, he will say, "You are God and I am not." And the way that this song starts, it's, "You are God in heaven and here I am on earth. So I'll let my words be few. I'm going to let my words be few. Jesus, I'm so in love with you. I'll stand in awe of you, Jesus. I'll stand in awe of you." And so it's like just this complete heart of humility before God, who is almighty. And it is an expression of, I come before you and I love you. And I'm thankful that you are God. And even though you are God and I'm here on earth, you cared enough to come down and save me. And so I'll add that into our list, and hopefully you guys will give it a listen.
No, that's good.
We're up to 35 songs.
That's pretty good.
We're starting to get like an actual like decent playlist.
Yeah, that's good playlist. Yeah, and if you like the playlist, we would like to hear, when you listen to it, where or what's your favorite song out of it. That'd be cool if you guys could let us know. I know
Yeah,
I listen to it some before I go up to have our service on Sunday mornings, trying to get in the right heart type of thing. So
and if you have music suggestions, maybe you have a song that isn't on the list or one that we haven't even heard. So
specifically, I want to hear more Christian rock, like that are biblical. Because like we have a couple on there, but like I know there's stuff that we're missing because we're all Jacob listens to more than we do, but like I would like to hear more biblical Christian rock. So if you like that's your jam, know some biblical songs, and maybe they'll end up on the playlist.
yeah, for sure. All right, we thank you for listening. As always, go bear fruit and so prove to be one of Jesus's disciples.